If you've ever stared at a card trying to figure out whether or not to buy it, or you've looked at your inventory recently and you realize that you have a bunch of money tied up in cards that you don't really have a clear plan for, I've got good news for you. There's a really simple way to fix this that will help you start making better card investing decisions from here on out. Now, if you're new here, I'm Ryan Seaver. I've been investing in sports cards for almost 20 years, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the exact framework I use before making every single purchase so that you have a repeatable way to quickly evaluate any card you're considering buying, and I'll even give you a sneaky tip at the end to evaluate cards you already own. All right, let's get into it. Now, I want to start by telling you a quick story. So let me take you back about 20 years to my early days of card investing. And do you want to know what I did when I was brand new in this space? I went on a shopping spree. Now here's the problem. It wasn't that the cards I was buying were inherently bad or that it was impossible to win on them. It's just that when I was buying them, I had no real reason for why I was buying them. I couldn't tell you the plan for a single one of them. So I was buying for reasons like I liked the player, or I thought the card looked cool, or someone was talking about this player online, so I thought I'd jump in too. And as I started trying to sell some of those cards over the weeks and months that followed, I found that many of them hadn't budged in value since I bought them, and some of them were even down in value. So I ended up losing on most of them, but I did win on a few. And so as I got more into it, I tried doing more of what worked and less of what didn't. And over time, here's what I started to realize. When I looked at every single successful investment I had made, all of them had two things in common, and every single loss that I took was missing at least one of these two things. So what are the two things? Well, the first one was a clear reason why the card's value would rise. And the second thing was a clear timeline for when that would actually happen. And so with that in mind, I created what I now call the why-when framework. And this is the foundation to every single investment I make in the card market. So when we talk about the why, I want to answer the question, why do I think this card's value is going to rise? It's basically your investing thesis. You've got to have a reason in mind. Because otherwise, what are we doing, right? If the goal is to make money, we've got to have a strategy in mind or we're setting ourselves up to get stuck in no man's land. And take it from me, that's a really crummy and frustrating place to be when you feel like you've got all these cards and you've got all your money tied up, but you can't actually sell anything for a profit. And so if we have a logical reason why we think the value is going to rise, then we look at the when and we ask the question, when do I realistically expect the rise to happen? Because a plan without a timeline is still just a wish. And I hate to break it to you, but wishing isn't a strategy, guys. So here's the thing. If you don't have a clear and logical answer that you like for both questions, that's usually a sign to slow down because that card probably isn't the best place for your money. Now, the best part about the why-when framework is that it only takes 30 seconds, but it helps steer us toward the plays that are more likely to pay off. And more importantly, it steers us away from the cards where we would otherwise be tying up money in cards that aren't actually likely to go anywhere anytime soon. Now, if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, Ryan, that sounds too obvious. Of course I should have a strategy and timeline in mind when I'm investing in a card. Guys, I agree. It's not overly complicated, but if you've done this for more than 5 minutes, I promise that you have cards in your inventory that you have no plan for. So even if it seems obvious, sometimes we still need a reminder to execute the fundamentals and a simple mental framework like this to help us. So here's what I want to walk through next, because it's one thing to hear me explain the framework, but I want to make sure that you can apply this to your own card business. So I want to walk through a few examples together, and for each one, I want you to decide whether it's a good play or a bad play using the why-when framework. All right, first one, your favorite player is Anthony Edwards, and you hunt down a beautiful serial numbered PSA 10 rookie card. What do we think? Good play, bad play? Yeah, this one's a bad play, and the reason for that is because we don't have a clearly defined strategy and we also have no timeline. So we're just buying the card because we like it, and that's not a strategy. And here's the thing, without a strategy, it's still possible to profit on the card, but it's just because we got lucky. It was basically an accident if we profit when we didn't even have a strategy in mind. Now don't shoot me here, guys. This channel is called Cardboard Profit, not Cardboard Collecting. So for all of these examples, our goal is going to be to try to make money. So if you want to collect your favorite players, just ignore me and do what makes you happy. That's totally okay. But for making money, buying a card of your favorite player without a plan, that's objectively a lousy strategy because we don't actually know why it'll rise or when. All right, example number 2. So we're looking at a raw Shohei Ohtani update rookie card. And we're looking at this because we've done our research and we know that we can buy the card for around 150 bucks ungraded. We send it off to PSA for $80 or so to get it graded. And if it comes back a PSA 10, it creates a meaningful profit margin of $400 plus dollars, even with the higher grading fee. What do we think? Good play, bad play? Of course, this is a great play because we are using grading as our strategy. So that's our why. We are going to get the card graded. And if it gets the grade that we need, we're going to add a bunch of value to the card. And then the timeline for this is the grading turnaround time, which is predetermined when we send the card off. So grading is a powerful strategy because we know the timeline when we make our submissions and we know the rough value if we get the grade we're looking for. So the strategy inherently covers both the why and the when, as long as we're sending cards that have meaningful upside and are clean enough to get the grades we need. Now, feel free to insert your jokes here about how PSA is taking forever. Like, I'm with you guys, but you get the point though. The key is that we just have a predetermined timeline. Okay, example number 3 here. So let's say you stumble onto a listing that's missing a keyword or the player's name is misspelled, and you can actually buy the card for about 60% of market value. Good play or bad play? Yeah, this is a really good play. So our why is simple. We've got a discount built in when we're making the purchase, and we're going to sell it for close to full value to turn our profit margin by simply fixing what was wrong with the listing. And then our win is also very clearly defined because we're creating the profit margin when we make the purchase. We can actually flip this card right away as soon as it gets to us in the mail. This is a strategy I've done a lot of over the years, especially in my early days because I didn't have a huge budget to work with. But even still, I stumble onto these plays every now and then. And even recently, I found this Shaq PSA 10 nuts and bolts card for about 70 bucks when they sell for 125 to 140 as PSA 10s. And the reason here is because there was an error in the listing title. So instead of Shaquille O'Neal, it was Shaquelle O'Neal. Kind of reminds me of that old Key and Peele skit with the "You done messed up, Aaron." Shaquelle? Where's Shaquelle? So anytime we can create a meaningful profit margin by just getting a steep discount compared to current market value, that's a great play because we have a very clear why and a very clear when. All right, example number 4. We buy a card of a prospect because we heard other people online talking about that same prospect, saying that they have some upside. So what do we think here? Good play or bad play? Well, I'd call this one a bad play, and here's the reason. It's tricky because it could actually end up being profitable if you've got a player that's got some real upside. But the reason why I call this a bad play is because you don't actually understand why you're buying it or what the timeline looks like. You're just copying everyone else. And so even if this does work, if you're just copying someone else, but you don't understand the underlying reason and the underlying strategy, that means that this is not repeatable. So the key lesson here is you've got to be able to voice the strategy yourself, not just copy someone else, but really understand, why are we buying this player? What's the thing that's going to make this card's value rise moving forward? And that's what will help you be able to do this play again and again, rather than just getting lucky once in a while. All right, example 5 here. So you buy a card on the way out of the season. It's a promising player who didn't make the playoffs, so they've been out of sight and out of mind for a few months now. And your plan is to buy that card now and then flip it on the way into the following season. All right, so what do we think here? Good play or bad play? Yeah, this one's a good play. So I call this the seasonal swing strategy. And what we're doing is we buy on the way out of the season when attention has kind of left the market for that sport, specifically for that player who's been kind of out of sight and out of mind since their team was eliminated months ago. And then we're looking to flip on the way back into the next season when all the attention returns to the market and values tend to pick back up. So our clear why is because we're playing the market pattern, we're playing the seasonal timing game, and our win is just a few months down the road leading into the following season. We have a clear why, we have a clear win, and that's what I'm looking for before I make a play. Good example of this, I bought a bunch of Caleb Williams cards back in February and March because that's when football tends to be at its relative low point, when players out of sight and out of mind, and he's a guy that I plan on selling going into next season. And guess what? A lot of his cards are already up quite a bit, so it looks like we've successfully predicted the future here. Hooray, right? But the key for this play is that there was a clear strategy and a clear timeline in mind from the beginning. All right, example number 6. So you buy a rare Kobe Bryant card because his legacy as one of basketball's all-time greats is completely cemented, and you think that over time his cards are going to get harder to find and continue to grow more popular, and that combination will help push values higher, where you'll have multiple opportunities to sell in the coming years for a nice profit. What do we think? Good play or bad play? I see this as a really good play. Why? Because you have a clear reason why you think the card's value is going to rise, and you have a clear timeline for it, at least an idea of the timeline, even if you can't nail it down perfectly. Now, normally I don't love longer turnarounds because a lot of people are trying to make money faster than that. But if you're going into the investment expecting a long-term hold, that's completely okay. Where it wouldn't make sense is if you told me your goal was to make a bunch of money 3 months from now, and then you start buying cards that you're going to have to hold for a year, 3, 5 years before you're going to see a return. That wouldn't make much sense to me. But if you're already working on a long time horizon, fine, do it. We've seen those exact types of cards rise quite a bit over the past few years, and I don't know that that's going to slow down anytime soon based on what we've seen in the market. Could be wrong, but that's kind of what we've seen in the data. Okay, one last example here, and then I'm going to show you my favorite way to use this framework, and it actually has nothing to do with buying cards. All right, last example. So we buy a Roman Anthony card. He's a top prospect in the Red Sox organization, and all the scouting reports seem to suggest that his bat's going to be elite. He's got everything it takes to be a star in this league. And so we're betting on this player to develop into the guy that we think he could become. And our timeline is probably in the next year or two. What do we think? Good play or bad play? So I think this is an okay play that skews toward good play. It's just that the timeline is a little bit uncertain there. We don't actually know if it's going to be this year or next year. And the 2026 season is a good example of where the uncertainty comes into play because he got hurt a month into the season and missed a bunch of time. So we didn't actually get to see what he could do right away. And that extended out the timeline. Now, the other thing about this specific play actually brings me to a really important lesson. Just because we have a clear reason why we think the card's value is going to rise does not mean we're always going to be right about the investment. And the thing is, that's okay. This is a calculated risk, and as long as I believe in my why and I believe in my win, I can live with the outcome knowing that I did the best that I could with the information that was available at the time. Nobody can predict the future, right? So it's okay if we end up wrong on one of these plays. What I don't think is okay is when we make an investment without any idea why or when we think we're going to actually be able to turn that card around for a profit. So for this example, we have a clear reason why we think the value is going to rise, even though it's uncertain. And then the timeline's a little less defined, but at least we have an idea of the window when we think he's going to have a chance to prove himself one way or another. So ultimately, that's a play I would be okay with making if I believed in his upside. All right, now here's the fun part with this framework. This isn't just useful for buying. This is also useful when you look at cards that you already own. And so if you're ever thinking about, man, do I hold this card? Do I sell? What do I do? Think back to your original investing thesis for that card and just use the why win framework. Does that original thesis still hold? Do you still believe in the reason why you bought it? Do you still believe in the timeline? Has the timeline shifted? Have things changed? In the Roman Anthony example, maybe we don't want to wait for him to come back from his injury. So we might just decide, this kind of changes the way I feel about the investment. I'd rather liquidate and move my money into a different card. Fine. But we've got to be able to take in new information and then change accordingly. Another great example of this is for a card that we bought with the intent to grade. We send it off for grading and it comes back a PSA 9 instead of a PSA 10. What do we do, right? Because our profit margin was only there if we made the 10. So now a lot of people will end up just sitting on that card holding because they don't want to take a loss. Like they want to see, all right, maybe I can stretch someone and see if I can at least get my money back, get my grading fee back out of that card. But here's the thing, if you use the why win framework, no longer do you have a why. You don't have a reason why that card's value is going to rise anymore because the whole reason you were buying that card was to get it graded, right? And you've already done that. So you executed the play. It didn't work out, and that's okay. That's going to happen sometimes. But the move here is to look at the why and look at the when now, because now you don't actually have an investing thesis. And that means that that is dead money tied up in a card that could be more efficiently used somewhere different, unless you had a backup strategy in mind when you bought that card. And so I challenge you, go through your inventory and ask, why do I think this card's value is going to rise and when do I think it's going to rise? Look at this for each player or each individual card if you want, and you're probably going to find some money that's tied up in a place that you don't really want it to be tied up anymore. If your belief changes, if you don't strongly believe in the why or the when anymore, it's okay to shift gears and to change where you're putting your money. Move on from that card, even if it's for a small loss, if it means you're going to free up a much bigger win somewhere else where you do have a clear why and you do have a clear when. This is one of the ways that you can be a lot more efficient in your business, is getting out from those plays that you've already executed where you no longer have a logical reason anymore to hold on to that card. But this is also a place where a lot of people get stuck and stop moving forward as fast as they otherwise could because they've got so much money money tied up in places where it really shouldn't be tied up anymore. So use the why win framework to go through your current inventory. Use it when you're making your next purchase, or at least exploring your next purchase, to make sure that that's truly where you want your money. If you don't have a logical explanation that you like for both the why and the when, don't move forward or move on from that card if it's something you already have. If you do like the answer for the why and the when, then that's probably your green light to move forward or continue holding that card. All right, now you have a framework for deciding whether you should buy a card. The next question is, which strategy should you actually be using? So when we talk about the why of the why win framework, I want you to be armed with lots of different strategies that you can use or even stack. And so I've got another video that looks something like this. And this is where I break down 15 different sports card investing strategies, where I talk about the good and the bad of each. And I even rank them so you can figure out which strategies are the best fit for you to consider using. I'll leave a link in the description if that sounds helpful at all. But otherwise, don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you on the next video.